She was building her cabin one log at a time, not because it was romantic or brave, but because there was no one else left to help her, and every swing of the axe into pine felt like proof that she still existed after everything she had lost. The valley quiet except for the wind sliding through, the tall grass and the steady rhythm of her breath as she hauled another stripped log toward the half-finished frame. Her hands blistered, shoulders burning, hair tied back with a fraying strip of cloth she'd once used as a curtain in the apartment she no longer had. The city, a distant memory she tried not to think about because cities were loud with ghosts, with promises broken and futures that collapsed overnight. So she had come here instead, to this wide stretch of land at the edge of nowhere, where the mountains rose like patient witnesses in the sky. Didn't judge her for starting over at 32 with nothing but a truck, borrowed tools, and stubborn resolve. Each nail she drove into the frame a declaration that she would not be undone, that she would build something solid even if her hands shook doing it. And she didn't notice him at first because solitude had become her armor and she had trained herself to believe that no one came out here unless they were lost or dangerous, and he was neither, just a presence at the tree line, still as a fence post watching without intruding, a man whose silence carried weight, dust on his boots, a wide-brimmed hat shadowing eyes that had seen more seasons than most. And when she finally did notice, it was not fear that surged through her but irritation, sharp and defensive, because this was her land, her work, her sweat darkening the collar of her shirt as she straightened and fixed him with a look that said speak or leave. And he did speak eventually, voice low and unhurried, as if he'd learned long ago that words were tools to be used sparingly, asking simply, "Need a partner?" And the question landed heavier than any flirtation or threat could have, because partnership implied staying, implied shared labor, implied a future that was not carried alone. And she laughed, a short sound edged with disbelief, telling him she didn't need anything from anyone, that she had it handled, gesturing to the uneven frame as proof, and he only nodded, accepting the lie without argument, turning to go as if he'd already decided the matter wasn't urgent. And that was when the log slipped from her grip, crashing down, narrowly missing her foot, pain flaring through her wrist as she bit back a curse, and he was there before she could straighten, steadying the log, not touching her, just anchoring the moment so it didn't fall apart the way everything else in her life had. And she hated the relief that flooded her chest because it felt like weakness, because she had promised herself never again to depend on someone who could walk away. And he didn't smile or comment or claim victory. He just held the log in place until she caught her breath, then stepped back as if to say the choice was still hers. And in that silence she saw something she hadn't expected. Not pity, not desire, but respect. The kind that comes from understanding hard work and harder losses. And she asked his name out of reflex more than curiosity. And he told her, voice steady. Then waited again, and she found herself talking, words spilling about the cabin. The winter coming faster than she'd planned for, the way the nights already bit colder than she'd expected, and he listened the way men do when they've learned listening solves more than speaking, and before she realized it, he had shown her a better way to brace the frame, a trick with the supports that would keep the walls square, and she bristled, then tried it, and it worked, and the sun dipped lower as the hours passed, her hunger creeping up unnoticed until he handed her a canteen without ceremony, water cool and grounding. And still she resisted the growing truth that this man was not a threat but a crossroads, that her choice now would shape what this place became. And when he finally said he had cattle to check and would be back through the valley tomorrow, she surprised herself by saying nothing to stop him, nor to invite him, standing alone again as the quiet settled back in, heavier now because it had been broken. And that night, as she lay in the truck beneath a sky crowded with stars, she replayed the question over and over. Need a partner? Not as an offer of labor, but of life. And she wondered when she had become someone afraid of being seen trying, because the cabin stood half-finished and winter was coming, and stubbornness alone would not keep the cold out. And somewhere beyond the ridge, a rancher moved through the dark, checking fences and stock, silent not because he had nothing to say, but because he knew some things must be proven, not promised. And as sleep finally took her, the sound of the wind through unfinished walls felt less like loneliness and more like a challenge. One she was no longer sure she wanted to face alone. The rancher returned before dawn, frost silvering the grass and breath fogging the air. And without a word, he set his tools beside hers, as if the decision had already been made. As if partnership was not something to debate, but something to do, and together they worked through the cold. His movements precise and practiced, hers determined and learning fast, the cabin rising sturdier with every beam set true. And when the first storm rolled down from the mountains sooner than expected, snow lashing sideways and wind howling like it meant to tear the valley open, they barely made it inside before the door was hung, huddled by a small fire that smoked and then caught, warmth blooming into the raw space and turning it into shelter. And in that tight glow she learned his silence had been forged by loss, a wife taken by illness, a life pared down to cattle, fences, and long days where words felt unnecessary. And he learned why she'd come here alone, how betrayal had hollowed her trust, until building something with her own hands was the only way she knew to feel whole again. And when the storm finally broke at dawn, leaving the world hushed and bright, the cabin stood, imperfect but strong, like them. And he didn't ask again if she needed a partner, because she was already handing him a mug of coffee, already making space at the table, already choosing something shared over something endured alone. And as the seasons turned, the valley changed with them, fences mended, land softened by laughter that came slowly but stayed. And the cabin became a home, not because it was finished, but because neither of them was carrying the weight by themselves anymore. And if this story of quiet strength, second chances, and earned partnership spoke to you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because more powerful stories like this are waiting just ahead.